The moment I walked into the banquet hall, I felt it, the shift in air, the veiled glances, the subtle hush that swept over the crowd like someone had just spilled red wine across a white dress. The decorations were as extravagant as expected, pastel roses strung from the chandeliers, gold-trimmed centerpieces glowing under warm light. And at the center of it all, my younger sister Cassidy, twirling in her ivory engagement gown like a debutante in a fairy tale that had never been mine. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Rachel. Over here. That was my mom, Sharon Quinn, waving me over in a silky burgundy dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. It hadn't for years. I held my breath, tucked my phone into my coat pocket, and walked across the room like I wasn't walking into a courtroom where I was already guilty. Every relative there knew why I was being summoned. Cassidy's honeymoon fund. You're late, Cassidy pouted before I could even offer a hug. We were waiting to make the announcement. What announcement? I asked, my stomach tightening. Sharon gave me that look, the kind that said I was being difficult again. Cassidy and Nathan are planning a 3-week honeymoon across Europe.
Tuscany. Prague.
Santorini, she said, placing a proud hand on Cassidy's shoulder. And we thought, since you're sitting on that Westbrook apartment, which you never even use. No, I said.
Just like that.
One word. No emotion. No explanation. You could have heard a pin drop. Nathan, Cassidy's fiancé, stiffened. It's not like you even live there full-time, Rachel. Come on, this is a family moment. We all make sacrifices. I laughed. And it came out more bitter than I intended. You're asking me to sell the only thing I own outright, I said. For a honeymoon? Cassidy's face crumpled into offense. You don't own that apartment. Grandpa left it to all of us. But you were just the first to claim it. That's not fair. Actually, I was the only one there when he passed. I was the one who took care of him. The deed has my name on it because he chose it that way. I could see the rage flicker behind my mother's smile. She stepped closer, low enough for only me to hear. You owe this family everything. You think that place is yours because you played nurse for a few weeks? Cassidy was planning her wedding. You were unemployed and had nothing better to do. That hit me like a slap. But I stood still, letting the tension sit between us. No means no, I repeated. And that's when it happened. Cassidy, red-faced and shaking, lunged forward and ripped the phone out of my coat pocket. Let's see how precious it really is. Before I could react, she lifted it and slammed it down on the marble floor. The screen exploded in a spiderweb of broken glass. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. Are you crazy? I shouted, lunging for the pieces. That's what greedy looks like, Cassidy yelled, facing the crowd. She couldn't give up a stupid apartment to make her sister happy. She always hoards everything Grandpa gave her. The shame I was supposed to feel never came. Instead, I stood up slowly, brushing the glass from my fingers. I looked at each of them, my sister, my mother, even my spineless uncles and cousins who were now quietly nodding along like they weren't complicit. I smiled. You want to talk about greedy? I said quietly, but the room had fallen silent. You want to know what I really did with that apartment? A few heads turned. They think I'm just hoarding real estate, I said, my voice steady. But they don't know. I already took something they'll never get back. My mother's lips curled. What the hell are you talking about? I turned and started walking toward the exit. You'll find out. I didn't cry when I got outside. Not even when I sat in my car, hands shaking over the shattered phone still clutched in my coat pocket. I just stared through the windshield at the banquet hall behind me, lights glowing soft and warm like nothing awful had just happened inside. Let them dance. Let them toast. Let them laugh and whisper and call me names behind champagne flutes. Because none of them knew the truth. That apartment, Unit 1203 in the Westbrook Towers, was never about granite countertops or skyline views. It was the last thread of dignity left to my name after my family spent years gaslighting me into believing I owed them everything. After Grandpa died, they tried to snatch the keys before the body was cold. But I was there, holding his hand, cleaning the bedpans, administering morphine, and most importantly, sitting beside him the day he told me the truth. "I know what they'll try to do when I'm gone," he'd said. "Your mother, your sister, they were always after what they didn't earn. But not you. You stayed. You listened. You helped me write it all down." And we did. In a folder buried inside the apartment safe was something no one in my family knew existed. A recorded video will, signed, witnessed, notarized, where Grandpa explained exactly why the apartment and several other small properties were in my name. Because for years, he had let my mother and Cassidy believe he'd leave everything to them. And they bought into the illusion. Meanwhile, I helped him restructure his assets, open trusts, and secure an LLC that was now quietly funneling rent from 5 different tenants into a growing private account, my account. Cassidy thought I owned 1 apartment. She didn't know I owned 6. And now that they'd publicly humiliated me, smashed my phone in front of dozens of witnesses, shamed me at their engagement party, and screamed about what I owed them, well, let's just say that was the final nail in the coffin. I wasn't just going to protect what was mine. I was going to take back everything they'd stolen from me since I was a kid, the respect, the freedom, the autonomy, and I was going to do it while smiling right in their faces. But first, I needed help. I pulled into the underground parking lot of the Westbrook Towers and took the elevator to the 12th floor. The security guard, Tom, greeted me with his usual nod. "Evening, Miss Quinn. Your sister was here last week asking for access." "I figured she'd try," I said flatly. "Don't worry. She won't get far." I walked straight into the apartment, my sanctuary, and flicked on the lights. It still smelled like Grandpa's old pipe tobacco. The view of the city stretched wide across the windows, glittering in silent witness to everything I was about to do. I pulled the folder out of the safe.
The will.
The LLC documents. The property deeds. The rent income statements. And the list. A handwritten inventory Grandpa had made of every favor I'd ever done for the family, from cleaning the garage when I was 12, to paying Cassidy's college registration fees when Mom forgot, to babysitting my cousin's kids every weekend for 2 years without a thank you. He'd written. She never asked for a dime. She just showed up. That's what real family looks like. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and made a call.
"Hey.
It's Rachel. I'm ready. Let's file the lawsuit." The morning after the engagement party, Cassidy's face was on every cousin's social media story, posing with balloons, hugging guests, toasting with champagne, acting like she hadn't publicly humiliated her own sister over a honeymoon budget. I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I sat with my attorney, Elijah Brooks, a quiet, brilliant man with a memory like a vault and a spine made of steel. I met him through Grandpa. He'd once helped Grandpa win a property dispute against the city itself. Now, he was helping me deal with the snakes wearing my last name. "You're sure you want to do this?" Elijah asked, flipping through the signed video will, the trust documentation, and the email chains Cassidy accidentally forwarded to me months ago, emails where she discussed how she'd take back the apartment with Mom's help. "This is going to blow things up." "I'm not just doing this for me," I replied. "I'm doing it because they think destroying someone's phone in public is acceptable behavior. Because they think screaming, 'You owe us,' is a valid financial strategy. Because they think love is transactional, and I'm done paying their price." He nodded and slid the final document toward me. It was a formal cease and desist order, backed by proof of harassment, malicious property damage, and attempts to falsify claims of shared ownership over inherited property. Cassidy and my mother were about to receive it within 24 hours, delivered to their doorstep by a legal courier with a camera, documenting the entire thing for future court records. I walked out of the law office with nothing but my coat and broken phone in my purse, yet I felt taller than I had in years. Stronger. Like someone who had finally decided to stop absorbing damage and start firing back, with facts, law, and unshakable calm. But that wasn't the only surprise I had planned. I'd already begun the second phase of my plan weeks before the engagement party, after Cassidy showed up at my door demanding I think of the family and do the right thing by signing away my rights to the apartment. She had no idea I recorded the entire conversation. "You don't deserve it, Rachel," she'd said, sipping her oat milk latte on my couch like she owned it. "You were Grandpa's charity case, not his legacy." "I earned this apartment," I told her, "by changing a few diapers while I was applying for med school." Please. Spoiler. She dropped out of med school after one semester and has been living off her fiancé's income ever since. She'd rolled her eyes then and said the words I'd been waiting for her to say. "I'll get Mom to help. We'll say he promised it to all of us. What judge will believe you over the rest of the family?"
It was all saved.
High-quality audio. Time-stamped. Verified. And now, sitting comfortably in a secure Dropbox folder linked to my legal claim. By the time I walked into my apartment that night, I already had 3 unread messages from Mom. "What did you do? Cassidy is hysterical. You better not ruin this wedding." I didn't answer. I just opened the balcony doors, let the cool breeze wash over me, and smiled for the first time in what felt like a decade. Let them panic. Let them spin. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to fight in the mud like they did. I was going to let the system work, and they would never see it coming. 3 days after the lawsuit was filed, Cassidy posted a cryptic story on Instagram. "When someone shows you who they really are, believe them." Over a photo of her engagement ring. The likes poured in. Her friends commented things like, "You don't deserve this stress, babe," and "let her rot." They had no idea the real rut had started from within, years ago, fed by entitlement, resentment, and a mother who weaponized guilt like it was a family heirloom. That evening, my cousin Haley called. We hadn't spoken in over a year. "Rachel, what is going on?" she whispered, like the phone was bugged. "Your mom came over to Aunt Denise's house sobbing. Said you're trying to take legal action against your own sister." "I'm not trying anything," I replied, steady. "I've already filed." There was a pause. Then, more softly, "Is it true you own more than just that one apartment?" I didn't answer. But silence speaks volumes. By the next morning, the whispers had become full-blown family shockwaves. Cassidy's engagement brunch had to be rescheduled because Nathan's parents were concerned about drama, and Mom had started calling every relative who'd ever borrowed sugar from us, begging for sympathy, spinning the tale that I had betrayed the family for money. But here's the thing about lies. They collapse under weight. And I was about to hand them something heavy. I sent one email, just one, to the family group thread they'd kicked me out of months ago. Subject line: "You said I owed you." Here's the ledger. Attached were screenshots of every text where I'd paid Cassidy's rent in college, a PDF of the hospital bill I'd covered when Mom had pneumonia, $4, $3.12 paid from my savings without ever being repaid, voice memos of their insults, threats, and one particularly damning moment when Mom told me, "You'll always be the backup girl, Rachel. We love you, but Cassidy is the one we're proud of." At the bottom of the email was a single line: "I'm not seeking repayment. I'm just done being your emotional aiding." 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A message from Nathan. I had no idea. "I'm so sorry. This is beyond messed up." Then another from my Aunt Denise. "Rachel, we were wrong. I was wrong. Let me take you to dinner. Please." And one from Cassidy. It was long, rambling, accusatory. Half a fake apology, half a desperate attempt to rewrite history.
She ended it with,
"You'll regret this when you realize you've ruined this family." I laughed. Not bitterly. Not cruelly. Just the quiet kind of laugh that bubbles up when you see clearly for the first time. Because what she didn't understand, what none of them did, was that this family had been broken long before me. I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped pretending. Cassidy's wedding was postponed indefinitely. No formal announcement. No press release. Just a quiet cancellation of the venue reservation and a silent unfollowing between her and Nathan on social media. Word spread fast. Everyone acted shocked, but deep down, I knew most of them weren't. You can only build so much on entitlement before the foundation gives out. And the thing is, I never said a word publicly. I didn't leak anything. I didn't go on a podcast. I didn't shame anyone online. I didn't even respond when Cassidy wrote a public family statement blaming legal misunderstandings and emotional burnout. Because I didn't need to. My silence, backed by receipts, was louder than any scream they could conjure. The final letter from my attorney arrived that week. The court had sided in my favor completely. The will was validated. The deed was confirmed. And my family, especially my mother, was barred from entering any of the properties tied to Grandpa's trust without explicit written permission. They called it a win for justice. I called it freedom. 1 week later, I walked through the front door of the Westbrook apartment again, this time with someone new by my side, Darren. We'd met years ago during a temp contract at an architecture firm and somehow reconnected through Elijah's office. He'd seen the broken phone, the broken heart, the layers of rage I'd worn like armor, and never once looked away. He walked in, took one look at the skyline view, and said quietly, "It's peaceful here. You'd never know a war was fought to keep it." I smiled. That's the point. We sat on the balcony with wine and takeout noodles, letting the wind tangle through our hair as the city buzzed below. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, no one was asking me for anything. No one was expecting me to shrink, to sacrifice, to swallow my voice just to keep the peace. And then, as if on cue, my mother called. I stared at the screen. I didn't answer. I let it ring and finally fade into silence. I knew what she wanted. Not reconciliation. Not healing. Control. But that was the thing I had already taken back. That's what none of them realized. When they called me greedy, smashed my phone, shouted that I owed them everything, they didn't know I had already taken something they'd never get back. My independence. My strength. My peace. And most importantly, my name. Not the name they warped into a guilt-laden puppet, but the version that stood tall, knew her worth, and built her own life one quiet victory at a time. That night, I took one last thing. I changed my phone number. Not out of spite. Not out of vengeance. But because I was done being reachable to people who only called when they needed pieces of me. I didn't owe them anything. I never did. And now they finally knew it.